Welcome back to Catch Up with Chuck from the Rural Futures Institute at the University of Nebraska. I'm Chuck Schroeder. I'm the Executive Director of the Rural Futures Institute. And I'm delighted to say that with me today is Dr. Tiffany Heng-Moss, who is serving as the Interim Dean of the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. That's a long title, Tiff.
That is a long title, yes.
Well, listen, as we've shared before, our mission at the Rural Futures Institute is to harness the intellectual energy of the University of Nebraska and its many partners across sectors in order to create a positive impact on humankind. That's a big mission. Well, central to that impact clearly is preparing the next generation of business and civic leaders in rural communities that will be our educators, our healthcare professionals, other leaders in the community, but by the way, who can be successful in a world that is unlike the one we have today and largely unpredictable. So for some time, we've wanted to get you all acquainted with Tiffany Heng-Moss, who is serving in this role as interim dean. But Tiffany is an education leader on the UNL campus whose creative and intellectual energy we certainly have grown to admire at the Rural Futures Institute. And we know from our conversations with her that Tiffany gets up every morning really thinking about how we can change the educational enterprise at UNL, within Kasner, but certainly UNL-wide, to prepare students for that changing world in their windshield. So, Tiffany, welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Well, Chuck, thank you for the opportunity. It's exciting to be able to come share with you some of the exciting initiatives that are going on here in the college, as well as some of the future things that we hope to be able to push forward. As you know, the college is now in its 145th year, and we have a remarkable foundation to build upon,
Sure.
And we are focused on continuing to transform the lives of our students here in Nebraska and around the world.
Well, listen, what we know is of interest to the folks who watch the show is, okay, they see Dr. Tiffany Heng-Moss, a luminary leader at the University of Nebraska. Let's help folks get to know you, because
Sure.
I know your family and your background created a foundation for this passion you have for education. So help folks know a little bit more about Tiffany.
Sure. Well, I'm originally from Nebraska, so I'm from a very small town called Talmadge, Nebraska. Most don't necessarily know where that is, but in southeast Nebraska,
Sure.
about less than 100 people, I always say on a good day, is the population of Talmadge. But that background was instrumental in helping me think about ultimately the career pathways that I wanted to pursue. But I have to admit that when I started my educational pathway after high school, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. And so I was one of these students that navigated that space by having several different majors. And at the time, I remember talking through with my parents about I was going on my fourth major change. And my parents like, this is not good, Tiffany.
They thought maybe their kid was a little weird.
Right. You're above average, but not in a good way, right, at this point in time. But what really helped me to unleash my passion and figure out where my space was at was an opportunity in the research side. And so I had explored many different degree programs, ultimately ended up pursuing an opportunity to work in a research lab on plant systems. And that unleashed my passion for research and discovery. And at that point in time, I knew a focus in plant systems was an area that I wanted to pursue. Ended up getting my undergraduate program, and at that point realized that I needed more education because I was very committed to advancing what we were doing in the plant systems area. And again, I wanted to learn more, and my curiosity was driving me, and so I accepted an opportunity to work on a master's program. And this area was in entomology. And I have to tell you that at the time, I did not recognize the importance of insects. In fact, I hadn't really thought about them. But what I knew is that the plant system that I was working on, they were causing problems to that plant system. And it was a creative way for me to explore how plants defend themselves from different biotic stressors and the stressor happened to be the insect. So long story short, I ended up finishing my master's degree, pursuing my Ph.D. And at that point in time, I was pretty much focused that I wanted an industry career pathway, and I wanted to still stay focused on research and discovery. But along the way, I had an opportunity to teach a course. And this allowed me to discover the passion that I had for teaching. At the end of this semester, I was like, I want more. I want more. I want to be able to interact with the students in a more meaningful way. And that changed my trajectory. So I went from wanting to be solely research and discovery to making sure that the position that I pursued upon graduation would include some aspect to connect with students through advising, formal teaching, as well as the side of experiential learning in that. And so I've been so very fortunate in my career to have great mentors and have tremendous opportunities. And so when I talk to students, I say, sometimes we don't exactly know where we're going to end up, but push yourself to try new things. Something that you think that you may not like, actually try it. That was the case for me. And you might discover that that really is where your passion is. And then at the same front, letting them know that the systems that we work in agriculture, food systems, energy systems, water systems, the landscape, and how that impacts people and our global society, I can't think of a more impactful career area to be involved in. And so again, I'm happy to be here, happy to have had the opportunity to be here at the University of Nebraska, and now the privilege to serve in the role as our interim dean.
Well, those of us that know you and know your capacity for engaging people from a variety of backgrounds around the globe, across age, realms, all that sort of thing, we think it would have been a terrible loss if we had locked you in a lab somewhere. But isn't that the magic of education?
Yes. It is.
It is that exploring, and it's not just a matter of knowing when you're 16, 17, 18
Right.
years old just exactly where you want to go.
Yeah.
It's so important to have that opportunity to explore.
Exactly.
So you were a 4-H'er.
I was a 4-H'er,
growing up.
yes.
You again, a lot of our parents are thinking about experiences for their kiddos as they grow up, and that was one I know that was important to you
Yes,
too. So
definitely.
part of that. Well, listen, you talked about CASNR, as we call
Yes.
it, the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources, 145 years old. It's gone through a lot of changes since I matriculated there 43 or 4 or 5 years ago, however long it was. Give us a picture of CASNR today, because
Sure.
I know that you have been a part of its constant reshaping
Right.
to reflect the change in the world.
Right. Well, as I mentioned, we have a wonderful foundation. Dr. Waller was an inspiring leader, really helped to set the course on the positive trajectory over the years with our increased enrollments, innovative programming, and now what we're looking to do is take it to the next level. And some of the strategic focus areas that we are paying very close attention to is, number one, thinking about holistic student development. And so really what we want to do is leverage all of those opportunities for our students to best prepare them to be those individuals that are going to go out to careers that are going to solve the grand challenges related to our food, energy, water, and landscape systems. And so we're being very intentional about thinking about linking curricular with co-curricular with experiential learning. So the Engler program, right, is a
Sure.
wonderful example on the entrepreneurship side about how we're leveraging expertise here on our campus, innovation, and connecting with our Nebraska communities
Right.
and our global society, really to provide our students with opportunities beyond what they might be experiencing if they were pursuing a degree in animal science, agronomy, horticulture, School of Natural Resources, agribusiness. We also are focusing on leveraging our partnerships. In Nebraska, we are in a phenomenal position to be able to leverage partnerships with public-private, global partnerships, our educational system. And so in fact, we've been traveling the state this past year. I've been doing that with Vice Chancellor Bain, reaching out to our 2-year partner institutions, NCTA, which is part of the University of Nebraska.
Blossoming in a remarkable way.
Exactly, as well as our 4-year partners. And really what we're trying to do is identify what are our unique strengths that each institution has. How do we collectively leverage those? Because what we want to do is make sure that we are serving the needs of our Nebraska youth, as well as how do we position Nebraska to be a opportunity and to be on the radar screen and a destination for our out-of-state students, as well as thinking globally also. So that's another key area. We also are thinking a lot about graduate education too in this space, and so we're collectively coming together as a faculty, a community of scholars of our graduate students, as well as employers of our students, to think about how do we push the boundaries of traditional graduate education, to think about more diverse career pathways, how do we link professional development opportunities for our graduate students, and how do we make sure that we have accessibility to students all over the world that are interested in the areas that are where the sweet spot is here for the faculty in the University of Nebraska.
Well, listen, I've watched you engage with the Engler students who we most often cross paths with, see the light come on for them. In that process of connecting across departmental lines, discipline lines, institutional lines in many cases, and I know that's been a big part of your thinking. I want to have you talk just a little bit more, because I don't want to threaten your job, but but I've heard Tiffany talk a little bit about embrace this whole notion of the higher education institution of the future, maybe a place where the departmental lines and campus lines and institutional lines are blurred much more than they are today. And you've talked about creating that holistic experience. Say a little bit more about that, because I think it's something that, quite honestly, it's a fairly thin layer of folks like you in higher education today that really are embracing that notion. But it could be critical to our creating those genuine real world problem solvers.
Right. And so what we need to think again about is this holistic, interdisciplinary, even when we think about going beyond to extend to transdisciplinary, where we're bringing the social sciences in as part of that, a very important piece in how we think about preparing our next generation of students. And so some of the ways that we're doing that is in our introductory course that we do for all CASNR students. We've shifted away from being more on a content focus area to science and decision making. And so how do you think holistically about an issue around water? And what does that look like from the science lens? What does that look like from your beliefs as an individual, the ethics behind it, as well as the economic driver and the social aspect of that? And so we're challenging our students to really look through the different lenses and to be able to defend their position on something, but taking into account what is the science behind that and let that be the driver in that decision making. So that would be one example of what we're doing. We're also on the other end of the spectrum thinking about interdisciplinary capstone experiences. And so we might have a student that is interested in animal systems. Well, then how does that link up with a student that's interested with plant systems? What about our natural resources? What about the economic side of that? What about the mechanization aspect? And so we want to bring these students together holistically, where we talk about these grand challenges, and they each bring unique perspectives to that discussion, and we can learn from that. But really, when we talk about grand challenges, it's not going to be solved by, in my case, an entomologist working independently about something, but it's going to be a collection, right, of critical thinkers and those individuals that look outside of the box and think creatively to solving these different types of solutions. And I can't think of a better place for us to start that than in our college classrooms. And so that would be another example of what we're doing. And the final thing I would lift up, which I'm really excited about, is this upcoming fall, we're going to be launching our very first upper class learning community. And again, it's building on the same things that we've talked about, and our focus is on water. And so we're linking with the Water for Food Institute. In this case, we want to extend beyond CASNR. So we want to bring students from engineering, we want to bring students from journalism, we want to bring students from arts and sciences, particularly the social science area, from the business community, to think about issues around water. And so our students will go through these different experiential learning opportunities, discussions, discussions, engaging with global leaders through the platform of Water for Food, and then ultimately they will go on an education abroad program, likely to Rwanda, which we already have connections,
Right. Yeah.
to
You've been a big
explore
part of that.
water quality, water quantity, all of those different aspects holistically from a team-oriented perspective that, again, is bringing now, stretching beyond Kasner, but these different areas of expertise. So that gives you some ideas about where we want to take
Absolutely.
this. Again,
Yeah.
knowing that we have our disciplinary pathways, and that is excellent, but also recognizing that we need more opportunities to bring those disciplinary pathways together at the intersection of this food, energy, water systems.
I just think it's so critical for folks in our audience to understand your thinking in that direction. One of my favorite classic examples is Shazin Wee at Arizona State, who challenges his classes to answer the question, what happens to Phoenix when there is no water? Well, is it an engineering question? Is it a theological question?
Right.
And it's folks like you that are going to create folks coming out of these institutions that can think in that way.
Right,
And that's just so
right.
critically important.
Right.
Well, listen, here at the Rural Futures Institute, we launched about 6 years ago, if I'm counting correctly, our rural serviceship program, where we connect high capacity students with communities to go out and solve real world problems. And I just was in McCook, Nebraska this week, where we've had actually 2 sets of students. We're going to have 5 students there this summer. It's been a transformational experience for students. One of our serviceship students is now their director of economic development. He and his wife live there, getting ready to have their first child, and so we know it's worked. I know that's this whole area of service learning has been of real interest to you. Talk a little bit about how you see that as part of this broad philosophy of yours and how it might be used more.
Right. So definitely that's a component of a holistic student development, right? Because you're linking what the students are learning through their courses, whether that be face-to-face, online, with opportunities, right? For them to put that in practice, for them to have community engagement, thinking again from this holistic standpoint and the impact that they can have. And so I very much am a big proponent of service learning. I'm excited that we already have some initiatives underway. We have students right now that are out there committing their time, their talent, and their passion to helping our Nebraska communities. But what I hope to do in the upcoming months is to work closer with RFI as well as our faculty and our colleges to figure out how do we infuse more service learning intentionally into our programs, because we know it aligns with the learning outcomes that we hope that our students achieve. And then the other big piece that I'm also very much interested in is how do we think from this global framework, right? And so we are a global college, right? We are a community of global learners, and I think that that's so incredibly important because these grand challenges are not going to be solved by an individual from Nebraska only, right? Or it's not going to be a student that we have in Rwanda that goes back, but collectively it's these individuals working together to solve these grand challenges. And again, it's the right time to be doing it in our college classrooms and that engagement. But how do we also think about serviceship through the lens of not only Nebraska communities, but what do Nebraska communities have in common with, let's say, Rwandan communities? And how do we think about empowering our students to connect with and engage youth in becoming interested in career pathways in agricultural natural resource systems? So really excited to work with RFI and look forward to doing some creative brainstorming about how we have service learning that is more infused throughout that curriculum to provide our students with these types of opportunities.
Sure. Well, you've talked several times about your work with the Rwandan program and this whole notion of. So I've been McCook this week, and I had the question, and you hear it all the time. Well, what you guys have done is you take our brightest and best kids, and you take them down there, and you educate them, and they go away, and they never come back. Well, the truth is, we know through the Engler program, our serviceship program, we have students coming from rural communities and coming from urban communities that are saying, you know what, I'm really interested in going to a rural community where I can build a business, build my family, get involved where I can make a difference. But which you have supported, but also have said, but you need to have that broader lens. And by the way, have a friend when you
Right.
leave this university in Rwanda, in Zimbabwe,
Right.
which we've had.
Right.
And we just know that it creates those global thinkers who are acting
Right.
locally, but who do see their role in a larger world.
Exactly.
Yeah. So listen, one of our core beliefs, Tiffany, at the Rural Futures Institute is that leaders are known not necessarily by their title, but by their vision, by their passion, by their energy, by their willingness to draw people together in collective action. And we think you're exactly one of those kind of leaders, and we're so delighted to be associated with you. Anything you'd like to add before we quit today?
Other than I just appreciate the opportunity to come visit with you, and definitely partnerships are key to what we do here in the college. Partnerships among our academic units, our different centers, our different programming that we can leverage in that way, and then thinking about what do partnerships look like on the side with our educational systems here in Nebraska, as well that private sector, government sector, and those types of things. And so that's one of the key things that I live by is how do we leverage those partnerships to best position our students to have opportunities that allow them to pursue their educational pathways and position them to be successful in what they choose to do next. So thanks again for the opportunity to visit with you.
Well, you're a door opener of first class, so
Thank
we're
you.
delighted. Well, listen, we invite you to stay in touch with the Rural Futures Institute through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and our website. We would love to hear from you and have you engaged in our work. And stay with us. We'll be back next week with another look at real people and real places that demonstrate thriving rural communities are a legitimate best choice for worthwhile living. Thanks for joining us.